This is Claire, and today we will be looking at the topic of obesity and overweight. I've heard friends, colleagues, relations asking me about this topic, talking about, I feel like I'm overweight, Claire. What can I do as a way of losing weight? Or I feel like I am obese and things like that. And so today I will be talking about or discussing this whole issue of obesity and overweight. So to start us off, let's begin by defining what is obesity. You will have heard about this term by now because, again, it's becoming a global issue and something that people need to be worried about and to think about, particularly when you look at the alarming rates of childhood obesity that are being recorded. But today, I will mainly focus on obesity in adult population, but then hopefully later on, I'll be able to address the issue of childhood obesity. So obesity is just the abnormal accumulation of body fat, which is usually 20% above the normal ideal body weight. I'll talk about this classification a little bit later on, but just one thing to think about is this accumulation of body fat may have an adverse effect on health, and that is why it is important for this topic to be addressed. And normally, when you're looking at body weight or body issues, normally they will look at the weight and define it based on what is known as the body mass index. So let's look at the body mass index definition. For you to be able to characterize or to come up or to derive the body mass index, it's just basically the weight, so your weight divided by your height squared. So for example, if you are 60 kilograms and then your height is 1.69 meters, so what happens for you to determine your BMI, you need to take your weight 60 divided by your height 1.69 times 1.69 because it's the height squared, and that ratio gives you the body mass index. So if that ratio comes to below 18, that 0.5, that is classified as somebody who is underweight. Between 18.5 and 24.9 is classified as normal weight. Anything above 25 to less than 30, which can be like 29.9, will be classified as overweight. Over 30 but less than 40 is obese, and over 40 will be classified as morbidly obese. So let's look a little bit on the statistics that shows us the rate of distribution of obesity. Again, as I said, this is something that a couple of years ago, people will say it's a disease of the affluence, mainly in the Western world. But currently, obesity is an issue that is of a global concern. And as you can see from these statistics here, of course, we've got USA leading on the rates, but just because it's a big state as it is, a big continent and a big country, and because of that, you'll tend to have like quite higher numbers. But again, there are some things that you need to think about in terms of countries in the undeveloped or developing countries which have quite a high prevalence of obesity. Obesity and overweight affect again around a third of the world population today, and because of this, if the current trends continue, it's estimated about 38% of the world adult population will be obese by the time we get to 2030, and another 20% of the world adult population will be overweight. And clearly, this is something that needs to be addressed, or an issue that needs to be looked into. So let's look a little bit. Let us look at the causes of obesity. There are many factors that influence body weight. It's not just one thing, as you can see here, it's not just one thing that contributes to somebody being obese. However, there are different things that all of them have an interplay and interconnection and result into issue to do with obesity. In humans, eating behavior is rather very complex and is affected by things like mood and emotions. And these can be, like, in a way, at the center of most of the issues to do with when you're looking at it with obesity. Because the mood you have, for example, some people have actually been shown to have frequent emotions such as anger and joy to have a strong influence on appetite and food choice. And appetite and food choice, of course, can have a correlation with obesity. Things like central biological factors, things like peripheral biological factors, they range from biological factors range from genes, whereby you can have an issue to do with genetic makeup or genetic factors. It is known that MC4R gene, which encodes for melanocortin 4 receptor, can change, and changes have been seen in ethnic groups, in a small fraction of ethnic groups that have been found to have obesity. So there can be that genetic impact or genetic influences. There can be things like some hormones or peripheral hormones such as leptin, which plays an important role in satiety. Things like insulin, estrogens, androgens, growth hormone have all again been impacted or have been linked or correlated with obesity. Sometimes, again, things like altered brain signaling, and these altered brain signaling can be impacted psychologically by things like, for example, again, we've said already, the mood, or they can be influenced, for example, when you've got insulin insensitivity, things like leptin not being able to function properly. All this can actually be as a result of changes in the way your brain signals for you to be able to actually say at the end of the day, I am full, I can't eat anymore. Whereas if this signaling is impacted, which can be impacted by things, again, I said, emotions, can be impacted by biological factors, etc., these all can play an important role in the causation of obesity. Things like food intake. What do you gravitate towards when you're eating your dinners and your meals, for example? Some people love to eat carbohydrates. Some people love to eat a given type of meal. There's nothing wrong with carbohydrates. There's nothing wrong with a given type of meal. But if your food that you're eating is constantly processed food, you are eating food that is high in nutritional, in calorific content and not necessarily nutritional value, because those two things are not the same. You're eating junk food, mainly fast food that is readily available on the go, and your level of activity is not par or consistent with how much you eat, that can impact again can result in obesity. So food intake, food choices. Do you decide to go for fruit and veg? For a salad, or do you decide to go for a McDonald's or go for KFC or Burger King? All those will have different impact on your body, because obviously in terms of the calorific load, a burger is not going to be the same as a salad. Those things are completely different, and so the choices you make in one way or the other, whether you like it or not, will impact and result in obesity. Looking at the effect, of course, is important. We've looked at some of the causes of obesity. We've looked at what is obesity, but then what are some of the effects? There are some of the things that can be psychological. Obesity and overweight can actually change the way people view themselves. Things like low self-esteem. And low self-esteem, again, can be related to things like being susceptible to being bullied. Of course, there is no excuse where people are bullied because of their weight, but these are some of the things that can impact when it comes to obesity. And of course, this can have an impact on the health, whereby if somebody has a low self-esteem, or if somebody feels they're constantly being bullied because of their weight, they will not want to socialize, and they can end up in things like keeping themselves much more locked in their houses, can go into depression and things like that, and that can impact again further on things like mental health, etc. There can be again physical impacts on the health, whereby, of course, we know health issues that arise from obesity, such as things like type 2 diabetes, which has nothing to do with genetics, but is more to do with people that have more overweight and obesity, whereby at the end of the day, your body does not know what to do with insulin and it becomes insensitive again because of not genetics, but because of, for example, being overweight. And this has had a very strong correlation between your weight again on diabetes. Things like cardiovascular diseases are well linked to body weight. Uh, Things like cancers, there are some cancers again that are correlated or linked to body weight, and things that you need to look at, which can have long-term impact on health as a result of overweight and obesity. So let's look at now, how can we be able to manage or to prevent overweight and obesity? As you realize that, again, as I said, eating is a complex thing. It's not just one thing, it's multifactorial. Whatever we eat, we just don't eat one thing. And again, food or diet is just one aspect when it comes to the causation of obesity. So to manage this is going to be more than one approach, but I'm just going to give a few things that I think can be useful when it comes to the management of obesity or prevention. Number one is diet. You are what you eat. You will have heard that over and over again. If you keep on eating junk in, you can end up, of course, at the end of the day, accumulating much more energy than what you need in your body, and this can result in more overweight and obesity. So if you want to try and prevent or manage obesity or overweight, the first thing is to watch what is it that you are eating. And I'll talk a little bit about these, the calorie in and calorie out concept a little bit later on in a while. The other thing is physical activity. You need to be active because a sedentary lifestyle is something that will definitely impact you and result more into issues to do with weight. And some people will tell me, does it mean that I have to go to the gym? And the answer is no. You don't necessarily need to go to the gym in order to lose weight. You can effectively go for a walk. And like, for example, some health institutions like in the UK, the NHS does encourage people to be engaged in at least 150 minutes of activity every single week. And that means can be like, let's say, if you do 30 minutes of a walk, you need to do just five days of a walk, and that will be enough in a sense of trying to keep you physically active. The other thing, again, if you're trying, for example, to lose weight, it's important to look at the calories you're taking in, but also the physical activity will help you to be able to get into a negative energy balance. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on. The other thing to think about is the home environment. How safe is your home when it comes to things to do with temptations? So, for example, if your house is littered about with biscuits, cookies, sugary food, that's a temptation that you will end up being constantly tempted. Let's say if you're feeling hungry or if you're feeling joyous, full of joy, you reach out for those foods. But if at all you try and swap that around, so that when you're going shopping, you buy things that are like vegetables and fruits, and then you put the fruits and let's say in on the counter, so that when you go into the kitchen or into the living room, the first thing that your eyes set, you set on your eyes are the fruits and the fruits. You end up having an apple rather than reaching out for a packet of crisps. And for example, if you're going shopping, if you buy more the fruits and vegetables and bring this to your home, there's a high chance that you're going to eat that. And if you don't have those temptations in the house, you don't have chocolates or have some of them, but you eat them in moderation, or you don't have, let's say, the junk food in your house, there's no way you will eat what you don't have. So again, being a little bit more careful with the home environment, just ensuring you're securing the environment so that you're removing the temptations. If the temptations are there, of course, keeping them out of reach makes a whole lot of difference. So now I've been talking a little bit, quite in a while, about this energy balance, and I feel I'll come back to it because I've talked about diet and I've talked about exercise. And I can see from this image here, your calories in, which are all to do with your food intake, so the food, the beverages, all those things that you consume. So if you consume your calories and then you end up, your body functions and physical activity are equal to the same amount. So in this case, what you're saying that if you want to maintain weight, whatever your calories in will be equal to the calories out. You need 1,000 calories to be able to function normally and carry out your physical activities. You consume 1,000 calories, that's gonna equal to you maintaining weight. But if you want to lose weight, the best way of losing weight is ensuring that you are in negative energy balance. And that is why most of the time, all the diets, what they do, and mostly, like, for example, some of them can be very restrictive. What they do is they tell you, for example, go on a keto diet. In a keto diet, it means that you are only allowing your body to burn the stored fat because you're eating foods that are less in carbohydrates, so there's no more fuel, and as a result, your body ends up converting the stored fat in the body into the ketones, and these become the fuel that you need to be to continue functioning. But then this can carry on over a given period of time, but their impact again in the longer term. So if your body is restricted of the energy from carbohydrates, it means that the calories that you're having that were originally be from that food group are less, and as a result, you are whatever that you are getting out that you need for your physical activity or your body functioning is more than what you're bringing in. And that takes you into what is known as a negative energy balance. And the negative energy balance can cause you to end up with losing weight. If you want to gain weight, of course, that means you need to eat more calories than what you need for your body functioning. And that results in storing of those calories in the body and end up in weight gain. And just to highlight again, these are some of the things to think about. So if your goal is to lose weight, just look at trying to have less calories. I know it's recommended for an adult to consume 2,000 calories for a female and 2,500 calories for a male. So if you want to lose weight, for example, as a woman, instead of eating 2,000 calories a day, you can decide to eat 1,500, and that means you are in deficit of 500 calories, and that will help the body to start to break down. But this does not advocate for things like restrictive eating because, again, let's say in the UK, the NHS does recommend losing not more than 500 grams of weight every week. And when you do that, drastic weight loss can actually have an impact because you can end up either putting back that weight later on, which is called regainers weight, or you can end up with health consequences as a result of that. So having looked at all this, I think I'll just try to summarize this by talking, kind of highlighting this image here. As you can see, we've talked about today what is happening. The world population is growing bigger and bigger. People are getting fatter and fatter. And of course, because of that, something to look at is look at the BMI. Again, as I said, BMI is not a good indicator for some of these things, but it is mainly used in combination with other things like the waist circumference, and that can help you to know when you have obesity and things like that. And of course, we know that obesity is related to other diseases. I'm not going to talk about that into details, but just the ABC things to think about when it comes to of obesity. Number one, adopt new healthy habits. So like you can have good habits such as biking to work, walking to work, having a balanced diet, exercising, for example, etc., which can actually take over things like driving to work, fast food, and watching television, which there's nothing wrong with watching television, but of course, just trying to avoid a sedentary lifestyle. Balance your calorie intake. So if your food you're taking in, your food you're taking out, I've talked about that in the slide before. Again, just being able to look at that. And finally, being able to control your weight gain, because at the end of the day, you want to ensure that if you are losing weight, you should ensure that you're maintaining that weight loss rather than where you've got like diets and things like that, that eventually you end up putting back all the weight that you've lost. So just to summarize, so today we've talked about obesity. What is obesity? Where you're looking at this overaccumulation of fat, and of course you don't need that because it has its own health consequences. We've looked at some of the causes of obesity, some of the ways that we can manage or maintain or prevent obesity, and hopefully that was a good overview that can help you when you're looking at tackling obesity.